Good morning, viewers, and welcome to the morning programs at Dailies on Echo Television International, where we look at the newspaper reviews, different stories that are actually trending on our Nigerian newspaper. I am your host, Sele Elisha, and I have with me my co-host, Rachel Kanse. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Sele.
Hope you rested well.
I did.
All right, that's great. We're live on Facebook and also on YouTube, so please do well to drop your contribution, your questions, and then we'll actually address them as much as we can. And I'll be starting with the first paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper. The first story, which is a big story, is on 2023 poll over 600 cases in court against INEC. This is coming from Yakubu, the chairman, and the writers following the story say, "You must rise above temptation," the Chief Justice of Nigeria warns at the inauguration of election tribunals judges. Says he won't condone abuse of power. So you can read more detail about what the Chief Justice said about all of this on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. Other stories still on the paper, we have train attack, federal government set to resume the Kaduna-Abuja service. That you can find inside the paper. And on the issue of the half salary being paid to ASU, Bajabia Miller sues for peace, and he assures Buhari will intervene soon, and I hope that he does that, because we know what this means at a time like this, where our educational sector is suffering, especially the tertiary institution. So we hope that the president will actually intervene. Possibility that he'll be back from his medical trip, so we hope that by the time he is in Nigeria, he'll be able to address all of these things. And just like we had yesterday, Falana said he should, the president should bypass the Minister of Labor and actually pay the ASU full salary, because we know that the only people that were fortunate is the Medical and Dental Consultant Association. Those are the only people that got to be paid their full salary, but Konua and also ASU did not get that. So we hope that that will be addressed, because the rate at which we are playing with the educational sector is really a sad one. So I hope that the president will do just that, and also just as the Speaker, House of Rep, has given us his word. So we hope and we keep trusting that something will be done soon about that.
And there was a concern that was raised last week that it wasn't right that the president was traveling out for medical trip and he's not passing power to the vice president.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and then I realized that why are we waiting for the president? Imagine in a situation where we had someone who was acting as the president, because the president is not available, we won't have to wait for such a decision. I feel this kind of time wastage is the problem we're having. Of course, the president is going to come back. We're not saying he's not returning, but I feel this is something that we shouldn't wait for the president. Like, this is a problem or a situation that needs all hands on deck. Like, it needs to be solved quickly. Like, ASU needs to know that their staffs are going to get paid. Like, everything needs to be rolling. There shouldn't be a halt anywhere. So having to wait for the president, I feel, is a setback. And if only he had handed power according to the constitution to the vice president, I feel Professor Yemi Osibajo will be in the position to decide what is the fate of ASU and concerning this payment. And we wouldn't have to wait, because this waiting is a problem. There's so much uncertainty. We're not even sure if the president comes back, that will be #1 on his list, because there are many other issues. So this waiting, I feel, is something that could have been avoided if only the necessary thing was done before the president left for his medical treatment.
Of course, Richard. So we just hope that we will really do things the right way next time, not wait for the president. Well, let's look at other stories still on the Vanguard newspaper, and that is on the terror alert. We have UK drop warning against travel to Abuja, insists risks remain. Other stories here, unemployment stagnant, growth in pension registration. Worst flood coming next year. This is coming from the federal government, and if the federal government is really giving us a hint on what is happening next year, then I think it's high time we put all things in place to avoid. We saw what the flood did this year. This number of states that have been affected: Kano, Jigawa, Bayelsa, and many other states that were affected. And we're seeing that right now that it's even the dry season, we're having issues that even the dust is going to be another problem. So I hope that with this signal coming from the federal government, possibility that they've already gotten highlights coming from the NINET about issues like this. So I hope that we'll put all things, agencies and ministry will work hand in hand. We'll see a synergy to be able to avert this flood from affecting other places. And on the issue of Ekweremadu, UK court moves Ekweremadu's trial to January 31st. Other stories here: Red commits $395 million to fund 267 electrification projects. And we have on the PDP crisis, why Atiku won't have my support, coming from the Benue State Governor Otto. And on 2023, still, why Tinubu won't attend debate. This is coming from Kenyamu. And we look forward to hearing more about why he didn't attend, even though we had a hint that he had other agendas and he did not want to be partial. But then we keep our fingers crossed, because we will love to have an interaction with the people we hope to actually rule us come 2023.
But something concerns me about this statement. He said, why Tinubu won't attend debates, meaning he won't completely, even the ones ahead. So we really need to know why he won't. This is not a statement that why he missed the previous debate, but why he won't attend debates. I think there's a continuous, like,
continuous tense over there.
Exactly. So why won't he? Like, we need to know why. We need to, like, we keep saying, we need to know who we want to vote for. We need to know what you have to offer for us. We need to hear you speak. We need to bond with you in this kind of debate and all of that. Let's know that you truly are credible, not just having the money to campaign and travel here and there, but we need to really know that we are having an intelligent president. We are having somebody with high intellectual that we will be able to depend and say, you know, his decisions we can rely on, the foresight he has for the country is something great. So why won't he? Because I don't understand this statement. Like, it has to be very concrete. If not, like, it's a red flag in a lot of ways. Why won't he attend debate? So we need to really know why, and then perhaps they should change this statement and probably just give the reason for the previous one, but then we hope that the future debates that will take place, that he will be there. Yes.
Of course, he should be present, because we want to hear from him. Well, let's look at other few stories still on the Vanguard newspaper. We have the MPC begs Biafra agitators not to disrupt the 2023 census in Southeast. And ICPC probes 712 projects in 20 states, begins disposal of forfeited assets. And the picture story here, we can see some of the delegates that were there during the 2022 UN Climate Change Conference. So if you want to read more about that, just go to any newspaper stand closest to you, grab the Vanguard newspaper and read any of the story that's of interest to you.
On the Daily Independent, I would rather die than support Atiku for president. This is coming from Otom, and you can continue why he is saying that on page 7. UK drops advisory against travel to Abuja, says risks remain. And the big story on Daily Independent, the Chief Justice of Nigeria warns 2023 election tribunal judges against recklessness. The writer says INEC chairman asked them to avoid giving conflicting judgment. Still on the Daily Independent, new approaches to addressing insecurity yielding results. This is coming from Monguno. Gunmen attack soldiers in Imo community. Abuja-Kaduna rail operations resume this month. This is coming from the minister. Niger Delta rep seeks sack of minister over comments on flood, and you can read that on page 6. No crisis in PDP except issues of structural imbalance and injustice. This is coming from Wike, and you can read that on page 6. Still on the Daily Independent, Bajabia Mila assures ASU of Buhari's intervention over salary cut, and the writer says organizes summit to find solution to tertiary education problems. And on the downside of the paper, IEA commits $395 million for unserved areas electricity, and you can read that on page 4. And that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On the Leadership newspaper, ex-leadership editor Danladi Adiyamo is dead, and send our condolences to the whole of leadership and also those who have been affected. Still on the issue of Ekweremadu organ harvesting, UK court moves Ekweremadu's trial to January 31st. Hope rises for traders as Abuja Kaduna train service resumed this month. And the fact that the story is repeating on almost most of our papers will show that the president and also those that are involved have done all that they need to do concerning that, because we know how travelers would definitely be skeptical.
Of course.
Knowing the fact that recently we had the issue of the terror, the terrorists that attacked and kidnapping. And we saw how long they were in the, the kidnappers' dens before finally help came their way. So I hope that all things have been put on deck. Talking about the CCTV, they said they will fix and every other thing that will be done. I hope that all has been put in place so that we'll avoid that. We don't want that we keep repeating that history, we keep repeating itself over and over and over again. We don't have to wait for another terror alert before we know that we have to be up and about to do things that are expected. We need to protect lives of people, because businesses will definitely be very slow because people will be very skeptical about using the train service again. But then regardless of that, I hope that the Ministry of Transport have done all that they need to do, and then so that this transport will be, will start going on smoothly.
And the fear is still fresh. It's not something forgotten. This is something that those that were held captive were released recently, and we knew how long it took and what they went through in the hands of the kidnappers. And the difference with rail is this: on the road we have this confidence. You reach a certain point, after some few kilometers you see a checkpoint. Of course, like, those checkpoints are not always guaranteed for safety, but it gives you some sense of relief that help is not that far away. But then on the rail, that's not, there can't be checkpoints on the rail tracks or after. So I really don't know what is the strategy that the government is coming up concerning security for our rail, but then something needs to be done, like, seriously. I don't know how they plan on going about it, but we wouldn't mind knowing so that we have some peace of mind, because, like, it's different on the road. As I said, you will reach some point, you will see that there are soldiers, you go some few kilometers, but that is not the same with the rail. So what are the federal government like? This is something that we as the people and people who plan to use the rail transport system need to know how the government plans to actually make sure that they are really safe. It's not just about boarding and it looks like there's security at the station, but what about on the road as the journey is going on? What are those measures the government is taking to see that these people actually reach their destination safely?
Of course, Richard. Even though they listed some of the things, they introducing some of the Troys that will actually be going ahead so that they'll be able to, track all these activities that are going on in case of any danger. So we hope that they are effective, they are also be useful, and that those that are supposed to be involved or in charge of that will actually not sleep on their duty, because
of course,
as a result of lots of people sleeping that we have issues like that. Still on the leadership newspaper, 600 court cases affecting the 2023 preparation. INEC cries out. The big story here, the die is cast in PDP, as we have the G5 governors launch campaign against Atiku. Wike, Otom, Epezu, Akwayi, Makinde talk tough, say party not ready to rule Nigeria. And the presidential candidate trade war over absent at debate town hall meetings. We're having 2 Kano comedians get 40 lashes for defaming Kanduji. Well, for those who are interested, you can read that story on page 6 of the leadership newspaper. No room for recklessness. The Chief Justice of Nigeria wants the election tribunals. Federal government slam opposition floods President Muhammadu Buhari fit in transportation sector. That also can be found on page 6. We have a picture story here, so you can do well to grab the leadership newspaper and read detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Time newspaper, INEC contending with 600 pre-election cases, says Yakubu. And the big story, new approaches to addressing insecurity yielding result. This is coming from Manguno. And the writer says, points to continual mass surrender of terrorists, their sympathizers in Northeast as evidence. Says Buhari's administration determined to ensure Nigeria attain desired level of peace and stability. Still on the Daily Times, Tinubu afraid to face Nigerians, Atiku Okowa campaign, and you can read that on page 2. Worst devastating flood coming in 2023, NEMA alerts Nigerians. UK warns citizens against traveling to Borno rivers 10 other Nigerian states. Still on the Daily Times, shun corruption. Chief Justice of Nigeria charges members of 2023 Election Petition Tribunal, swears in 307 judges, judicial officers as members, resists pressure, influence, gratification. Appeal court president warns tribunal and members. And you can continue with that story on page 2. And there's a picture story of with the governor of Plateau State and the other members of the All Progressive Congress and the current presidential candidate Bola Tinubu. And if you want to read more of that, get the Daily Times. And that's all the news on the Daily Times.
On New Telegraph newspaper, CBN credit to banks in 6 months rose to 103.2% to 4.52 trillion naira. And we have First Inland Revenue Service endorses banks, telcos and others to withhold VAT charges that you can find on page 26. Other stories here, we have election petition. We are battling with 600 court cases, says INEC. And we have on 2023, the IGP orders release of bulletproof vests, orders to personnel. I'm really happy and I hope it goes round because we know they are always at the forefront, especially when it comes to kidnappers and other, will I say, crimes that happen within the civilian, arena. So I'm happy and I hope that this vest will get round to all of the police officers because they need to be protected. Other stories here, which is on 2023, Tinubu target 25 million Niger farmers. I think it's a way of actually lifting and also injecting more money into farming. The big story, which is still on PDP crisis, Atiku Ayu boycott Guber campaign flag off in Benue as the G5 governors inaugurate Autumn's project. Voting PDP in 2023 is live and dead. This is coming from Ekpezu. And then from Rivers, talks attack Atiku supporters pasting posters. You can read more of that too on page 3 and 28. And for issue of ASU, federal government set up joint committee to address the IPPIS peculiarity. Buhari will intervene on half salary, says Bajabia Amida. Appeals to the lecturer for calm, and I hope that help comes their way as soon as possible. I don't know why we're still going back and forth on this pay rule that they have, whether UTAS or IPPIS. It's really a sad one that we're becoming like a broken record, repeating the same thing over and over again. So we hope that they address that issue and then things will go smoothly. Umahi Dire Emmanuel presents 139 billion naira, 385.2 billion naira, 695 billion naira for the 2023 budgets. Reps vow to recover ecologic funds from the state of the MDA, says flood killed 600 across the states. On 2023, Obi will no longer debate with surrogates, delegates, reps. This is coming from the Labour Party. Federal government set to resume the Abuja-Kaduna train services. Still on 2023, we are not against political rallies in the Southeast, says IPOP. And the World Health Organization predict pandemic deadlier than the COVID-19. Tax Nigeria on preparedness. NEMA caution on more devastating flood in 2023. As Senate mulls placing agency under presidency. Nigeria, second country with unimmunized children. This is coming from UNICEF. That you can find on page 2 and 5. It's really a sad one if World Health Organization is saying that. So now the question is, what is the Ministry of Health doing about this? I keep repeating myself over and over that it shouldn't be like that of the COVID. We felt we were safe when the outbreak started newly. And then little did we know that it was just close to us and we saw what that did to us. So I hope that with this, I can't imagine what can be more deadlier than COVID-19. So I hope that we put all that is needed. We saw reps trying to see as much as they can do to prevent Ebola from resurfacing again. And then we are going to see other illnesses also. We're still looking at the monkeypox, Lassa fever, cholera, and many other illnesses that are yet to even be totally eliminated. So I hope that we work towards that. We saw just recently during the polio that polio is beginning to creep in again. I mean, this is something that we said we have forgotten, where there are lots of immunization. Now we are seeing that about I think they say Nigeria is the second highest,
Yeah.
right, with unimmunized
Immunized
children. So you know
yeah.
what that means, right? So I hope that we'll do all we need to do. The Ministry of the Health, work together with the Commissioner of Health, go down to the primary health units so that something can be done, so that everybody will be safe no matter what comes our way.
I think we have a sleeping culture, and that's why we're suffering with things that we're supposed to be done with. It's like we start the work, we see that we're like 70%, and then we just stop all of a sudden. Because just as you said, I don't think we should be concerned about polio coming back. I don't think we should be concerned about Ebola coming back. I don't think there are a lot of diseases, virus, and whatever sicknesses that by now I feel in this country we should be done with then. But then you realize that what needs to be done wasn't done to 100%. I think that's the problem, and that's why we keep going back, and it looks like something fresh, it looks like something new, whereas it's something that we should have been done with it years ago. So I think we should wake up, and we should always see things to the end. What are the measures to be taken? Don't feel comfortable because you have 70% success. Don't feel comfortable because why don't you try for 100%? Why is it that all of a sudden we're having children who are not immunized? What happened to the Nigeria where there wasn't such issues? Why is it coming back? Then it means we're sleeping somewhere. It's like we start the work, we're excited about the result, then we relax, and then we go back to sleep. But you see, growth don't happen like that. Sure. Development is continuous. You can't sleep because the day you sleep, you wake up and realize that you're left behind. So we should stop sleeping and make sure we're 100% always on our toes for things like that, because we are struggling. If these things should hit us now, it will affect our economy. We keep saying Nigeria is just at we are at the position where we're just at the edge of the fence. Every little thing affects us. Every little thing comes and hits us, and the next thing is there's no food. Everything hits us, the next thing there's no this thing. We're always at the edge of everything. Is because when we start, we don't see to the end. We don't give our 100%. We just stop at 70 and feel comfortable. So we need to take that out of the way and always see to the end of everything, most especially with our health sector.
Of course, Rachel, I totally agree with you. Well, that's all on the New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, the Chief Justice of Nigeria to Election Tribunal, judges don't be reckless. And still on COP27, UN unveils $3 billion plan to achieve early warning system. I will reclaim my mandate, says Governor Oyetola. $550 million Gavi grant for 8 states to strengthen vaccination. And you can read that on page 5. Still on Abuja, Kaduna rail services resumed this month, and Yewa Monarchs back Obiodun, and you can find that on page 27. And the big story on the Nation newspaper, women, farmers, artisans, and others reunite for Tinubu. The writer says Marafa Ayibo sure of victory for APC presidential candidate next year. Buhari ready to intervene in ASU's half-salary matter, says Bajabia Milan. You can continue with that on page 4. Nobody can break our ranks, Wike, Otom, and Makinde insist. To hell with Atiku and anyone supporting him. They should go and tell him, anybody supporting him, Atiku is an enemy of Benue. My people are being killed and you want me to be quiet. And you can find that story on page 28. And on the downside of the paper, Obi threatens to boycott future debate. Ekweremadu knows fate by January 31st. And you can read that on page 28. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that paper review on the Nation. We're right for a break at this moment where we'd like you to actually chew most of the story we have taken. And when we're back, we'll continue with the newspaper review. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We've been looking at various stories that have been trending on our paper. We saw Ekweremadu's case that have been shifted to January 31st. That is where he gets to know his fate. And also the Labour Party presidential candidate is actually threatening to boycott future debate. Now, we don't know what that means. Possibilities are maybe because he feels other parties actually, boycotting it. But then we look forward to interacting with our future president. So we hope that they show up. There are a lot of other stories on the paper, so you can do well, drop your comment or also your contribution on our official Facebook and YouTube pages. And Rachel Tanze is still here with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sally.
All right, let's look further to other papers, and I'll be taking the Guardian newspaper. Ekweremadu court adjourned till December 16. Daughter charged with parents. You can read more of that story inside the paper. Petrol may hit 250 naira per litre despite the 4 trillion naira subsidy. Ipman says depot price now 190 naira per litre. We hope something will be done to regulate the price. ANAP Foundation releases poll outcomes in 5 states. Other stories here, federal government announces resumption of the Abuja-Kaduna rail service 7 months after. The big story, which is on 2023, the G5 PDP governors not relenting in fight with Ayu and Atiku. The writers following the story says, autumn, to hell with Atiku and anyone supporting him. Benue Road leading to Ayu's house named after Wike. Ayu Sean Benue PDP campaign flag off. Disregard Autumn's grandstand. Benue will vote Atiku, says Chila. Wike cannot stop Atiku's victory, Rivers Group insists. And then we have Wike should be kicked out of PDP. This is coming from Uwoko. And then PDP demands probe on attack of Atiku supporters in Rivers. So you can read that on the front page and more of the story on page 6. Other stories here, stop 2023 elections. Politics not solution to Nigerians' problem, says Obi. So you can read more of that story too. And Nigeria Twitter agreement risks collapse over global restructuring. You can read all of that on page 6 also. And we have a picture story here, so you can do well to grab the Guardian newspaper and read any of the story that's of interest.
On the Daily Sun newspaper, troops wreak havoc in Abia community or have fear over alleged missing soldier. The writer says kill 10, raise 50 houses as native flee homes. Still on insurgency, military operations yielding positive result. This is coming from NSA, and you can read that on page 4. And the big story, major crisis looms in Atiku campaign. The writer says Akwa Ibom government nulls resignation as PPC chairman alleges lack of funds. State Information Commissioner says government committed to PDP's success. Insecurity, flooding, threat to food, economic growth. This is coming from our defense minister. Abuja-Kaduna train service back this month. And the writer says governor denies anti-Southeast agenda on narrow gauge rail project. And you can read that on page 27. Tinubu to farmers, you will return to farms. Still on climate change, Bill Gates Foundation pledged $1.4 billion champions protection for small-scale farmers. Obi won't participate in further mixed debate. This is coming from his campaign council. Still on the security alert, UK upgrades Nigeria from amber to green. I will not condone act of recklessness, the Chief Justice of Nigeria warns 2023 election tribunal members. 600 election cases pending in court. INEC laments. Ekweremadu UK trial now to hold January 2023, and you can find that on page 3. And we have a picture story on the Daily Sun where we can see Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State, Nyesom Wike of Rivers, Samuel Otom of Benue, Okezi Epezu of Abia, Ifeanyi Egwanyi of Enugu during the PDP campaign flag off in Makurdi, Benue State yesterday. And that's all the news on Daily Sun.
On Nigerian News Direct, we have media telecom regulators partner. This is coming from Dambata. And the first Inland Revenue Service releases conditions for MTN Airtel banks to collect and remit their VAT. That also can be found inside the paper. On 2023, Christian youth canvass support for Tinubu and Shettima tickets. The big story here, federal government to link 36 states with the rail lines to reopen the Kaduna-Abuja rail line, promises constant surveillance monitoring to prevent attacks, as the Ministry of Transportation seek fake approval for executing the Warri railway line. That you can find on page 4. President Muhammadu Buhari's scorecard, APC has a lot to campaign with. This is coming from the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed. Banks should target financing trade to boost export from Nigeria. This is coming from the LCCI. We have 2 picture stories. You can do well to grab the Nigerian News Direct paper and read detail of any of the story of interest to you.
On the Voice of Liberty, Naira slumps to 885 per US dollar despite EFCC raids on Bureau de Change hubs. Terrorists abduct kill governor's chief cook after collecting 5 million ransom in Kaduna. Adoption of smart approach, other techniques yielding results. This is on terror threats and is coming from NSA. And the big story, UK drops warning to its nationals against travels to Nigeria, including FCT, says Abuja now relatively safe. The United Kingdom says it no longer advises against travel to the Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria. PDP group asks Wike to account for frequent ridiculous donations, demand accountability. Nigeria won't have any economy if you were still in power, Lai Mohammed hits PDP. Still on 2023, to hell with Atiku, anyone supporting him is my enemy. This is coming from Otom. And on the downside of the paper, Abuja-Kaduna train services to resume operation this November, coming from our federal government. And we can see that they have put a lot in place for people to feel safe and okay. And that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
On the first newspaper, MTN, Airtel and others appointed by the First Inland Revenue Service to withhold VAT charge to them. Buhari will intervene in ASU's outcry over the half salaries coming from Bajabian Miller, says federal government action in interest of law. Troops shot dead terrorists harvesting crops in Zamfara state. You can read more of that inside the paper. And we have a fresh terror alert. UK wants citizens to avoid 12 Nigerian states, namely Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, Kaduna, Katsina, Zamfara, Delta, Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Cross River as black spot. Declares others as risk area, advises travels on very essential basis. Well, it seems most of our states are now becoming a place of terror alert. I hope that we do more, because it's really sad when we keep having reports coming from other nations about what is happening in our own country, as if we do not know or we are actually not up on our game. So we look forward to seeing that all these soft spots, as been mentioned, will actually watch out and actually avoid any other, even though we're still having, we can see that of, it's a troop of terrorists being shot in a farm in Zamfara. We know that for a number of years right now, we've been having issues on the northeast and the northwest states around there, and they are namely here. So we look forward to the security agents to doing much more to protect those states and also the residents living there.
And you know, Sarah, the thing about terrorism is that it comes with a ripple effect. It starts in one place and spread. So it's not surprising to me that more states are in danger and there's terror alert like spreading across. The only unfortunate thing, as we said, is why does it have to come from a foreign body? Why is it not within us? Why is it that it's not our defense headquarters coming out telling us? Why is it not the IG police telling us there's a threat in so place, there's a threat? Why is it always from a foreign body? But still, yeah, it's not a surprising thing, because terrorism spread. They don't stay in one place. There's an aim. They have an agenda. And permit me to say they are more focused, because they keep growing, they keep waxing strong, they keep moving from one place to another. And we sit down and we're watching and we feel like, I thought it was only a Maiduguri thing. I thought it was only a Plateau thing. I thought it was only a Kaduna thing. And now we can see that even the Southeast is not left out and all of that. So yeah, it's not, terrorism grows. Then what is the government doing to kill that growth? That's the question. What is our government doing to cut their roots, to cut their branches, to cut whatever is that thing feeding them? Because they will continue to grow as long as nothing is being done.
Of course, Rachel, so I don't want to believe that they are stronger than the Nigerian army, because we have the strongest force in the world.
They are not.
Because when it comes to peacekeeping, I mean, give us kudos, we will do just that. So there are no wonder, you know, the chief of staff to the president said that we should be given a permanent seat in the UK for security. But I believe that we will be given that seat as far as we can fix our own house in order. Still on the First News newspaper, we have 13-year-old Nigerian ICT genius gained the US varsity admission. Nigerians are really doing us great out there. We're really happy. Still on 2023, anybody supporting Atiku is Benwe's enemy, coming from Governor Samuel Ortom. Governor Dire presented the 2023 budget proposal of 385.2 billion naira, set up flood control directorates. I will revamp agricultural sector, Tinubu promises Niger farmer. And more turbulence awaits the PDP. This is coming from Fayoshe. On 2023, Chief Justice of Nigeria swears in members of Election Petition Tribunal. And we're having Ned Owoko saying that Wike is a nuisance, should be kicked out of PDP. So you can read more of that back and forth coming from the PDP. Extortion, we have MC Olumo submits to Jadwa demands. Why Tinubu may never attend any presidential debate. This is coming from Kinyamu. Mox Obi Kwankwaso Okowa says presidential candidate at Arise TV town hall debate confesses like winches. Well, I do not know why he has to use such a very abusive language, but we hope that all of that will be controlled. I believe INEC has given terms and condition guidelines for campaign. So I wonder why we keep hearing name calling left, right, and center. We can hear Governor Ortom saying that to hell with Atiku. Kenyamo is saying they're confessing like winches. You begin to wonder why all these words, languages, abusive things, you know, coming out from their lips. I believe that there are much better things, in as much as we're tired of hearing manifestos. Today you tell us you are with us, and then finally when we hold you accountable, you tell us that things are really hard, you have to fix things, you know, all of that. But then I believe as matured people who actually have a foresight for the country should be able to sit down and see what can we do better rather than calling each other names. So we look forward to seeing a campaign that is free of any language, bad languages, or anything of that sort. Alleged human trafficking, Ekweremadu's daughter appears in UK court as judge adjourns that trial to January 31st, 2023. The last story, which is on basically all of the papers, is still on the Abuja-Kaduna train service to resume this month, coming from the federal government. And that's all on the First newspaper.
On the Nigerian Tribune, states in distress. This is coming from El Rufai. Ekweremadu's daughter appears in UK court. Atiku supporters attacked in Rivers. FIRS appoints MTN, Airtel, and others to collect VAT. 119 days after Oyo Assembly seat still vacant, and you can read that on page 22. EU allocates 500,000 euros to combat cholera in Nigeria, and you can read that on page 2. And the big story is still on our flood. Niger Delta reps, Ijaw elders tackle minister, and the writer says Bayelsa flood impacted 1.3 million persons, caused 96 deaths. Government says NEMA DG blames states for poor response to disasters. Northern farmers recount losses as food crisis looms, and you can read that on page 14. Still on the Nigerian Tribune, on the Ikoyi building collapse, 2 remaining towers undergoing demolition, and you can find that on page 18. Abuja-Kaduna rail services resumed this month. This is coming from our federal government. Bandits kidnapped, killed Masari's chief cook, 7 others in Zamfara. Timothy Adego, court adjourns case till December 1st and 2nd. Avoid conflicting judgments, INEC tells judiciary, and the Chief Justice warns justices, judges on election petitions tribunal. And the salary palaver, still federal government inaugurates joint committee to address IPPIS. Bajamiala begs ASU and assures all Buhari intervention, and you can read that on page 28. And there's a picture story of the state of the East-West Road after flooding. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Let's take a look at the Business Day newspaper, where we have FX crisis cripples firm as port activity slows. 7 weeks to Christmas and New Year celebration, the hustling and the bustling usually seen at the Nigerian port in the run-up to the festive season is absent as foreign exchange crisis troubles importers. Business Day gathered that businesses are cutting importation due to the foreign exchange scarcity and uncertainty in the economic and also the impact of surging inflation rate in the country. It's really sad, just reminding us the countdown to the celebration, and yet dollar is not in circulation, importation, people that depend on so much of that to actually celebrate Christmas.
True.
And it's so unfortunate. But we believe that regardless of what it is, we will celebrate the Christmas and then things will be better. We're looking forward to seeing that at least you can go to the market and buy things at a cheaper rate. And this should be an eye-opener for us to see that we need to do much more in actually, creating our own, even talking about fabric to sew your clothes, talking about food consumption. Let's do something to actually have everything inside, and then all we'll be concerned about is how we can export it and generate more revenue, rather than thinking of, okay, wheat will not be coming from Ukraine. How are we going to get flour? Bread is expensive. Imagine possibilities are we might not even you might go to a house and then you will not get any refreshment during the festive season. But we just hope that things will become better soon at the end of the day.
And the sad thing is, it looks like it's a trend in this country that once we are approaching the end of the year, everything skyrockets. There's fuel scarcity, the fuel price goes high and automatically affects food prices and all of that. And we just keep looking forward to a Nigeria where from January to December you buy rice 200 naira in January, you buy it in July 200 naira, and in December it's 200. We're yet to witness that. Years ago we did, but it's been a long while. Inflation is really eating us up, and it's always approaching, and Christmas is a big celebration. Of course, I am looking forward to it. We as Christians are looking forward to it. It's one of those moments we all look forward to. But every year it's like there's a struggle. True. There's just a struggle with food price, and it's not a nice thing. Let me put it like that. It's not a nice thing, because just as you said, and it will be sad. And we pray, we hope and pray that it doesn't get to the extent where we go to houses and there's no food, there's no refreshment, or people just have enough to eat for a day. We know how Christmas is. You start eating a week before and you keep eating 4 weeks later. So we look forward to where we have enough, not just for one day, but for days ahead. It's really sad, but then something can be done. And I know that there is a Nigeria that we could have the same price of fuel, food, everything the same from January to December. It's achievable. We hope that our government do the work.
Of course, we all have to put our hands and do that together. Still on the Business Day newspaper, we have Lagos Island mainland commute turn hellish on the Eco Bridge closure. You can read more of that on page 2. And we have Nigerians have right to hear from all candidates. This is coming from ANAP, the foundation that have decried the failure of Bola Tinubu, the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, and also, the Atiku for not showing up. Naira halt fall as demand for dollar soften. That you can actually find on page 2, and that's all on the Business Day newspaper.
On the Business Standard, creative question in HSC Bangla exam raises uproar. And the big story, this is how project aid utilization is gearing up. People are getting benefit of our development work. This is coming from the Prime Minister. Foreign debt burden of PVT sector a concern. This is coming from IMF. And let's have in mind that this is a foreign paper for Bangladesh. Reserves now $34.47 billion after ACU payment. Walton registers loss for the first time in its history. And if you're interested, you can find that on page 6 of the Business Standard. And that's all the news on the Business Standard.
And let's also look at another international paper, which is the Independent. We have Sunak Sean pleads for climate crisis reparation. World is on a highway to hell over emission, warns the United Nations chief. And here we're having that Rishi Sunak has dealt a blow to the country's hardest hit by the climate crisis by shunning appeals for reparation for the natural disaster caused by pollution. And it's not just in the UK, but even other parts. We have been affected by pollution and other climate crises, and no wonder their meeting that held in Egypt actually look at how it can be controlled, because this is not just a regional thing or a country thing. No, this is a global, issue. So I believe that every state, every president, every world leader have to put their heads together to see how we'll be able to control that. And if you take a look at the pollution, I mean, you know that pollution has done lots of disaster, especially when it comes to our ecosystem. Some of the industries we have around, the way they release some of the, not to talk about the air waste, talk about even the waterways. Some of our rivers have turned out to become gutters as a result of all this. So I think there should be agencies that will monitor all of this. I mean, I look forward to seeing where in every part of the country, or in even every part of the city, or you can actually find where you can drop possibly all these bottles where that can be recycled, rather than seeing them littered all around, causing lots of chaos and even pollution. So we look for that every other agency will look into how we can control that, and then that will actually even create revenue. I've seen where houses are being built using some of these plastic bottles. You just see them being filled with sand. Very beautiful. People are being creative on how they can recycle all of this. And so we look forward to another way that we can actually generate money, when we look at those parts. So I hope that we'll all sit down, think deeper outside the box, and what we can use things that are around us to create better things.
And we have a lot of plastic waste in this country, and then it also contributes to the climate change damage and on pollution and all of that. And the thing is that we sit down and we watch these international countries and bodies, and we feel like they're the only ones with problems. But I know there were times years back that a whale was washed up offshore and then dead, and the people at the beach ate the meat and they were partying. But this whale must have eaten something. It's most of the times plastic waste. They swallow things that they're not supposed to swallow, and they end up dead. And whether we like it or not, we need these animals for our ecosystem. There's a reason why they are there. They're not supposed to die. They have a long lifespan. They're not just supposed to die and then you eat them and just feel like God have provided your daily bread. No, you're supposed to look, why was this whale washed up on the sea? What killed it? And then try to avoid other whales going through such situations. So we need to take climate pollution and whatever it is that is affecting the whole world seriously at this side of the world, because we are not doing much about it.
Of course, Rachel. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much to our crew members. Thank you to our followers, our supporters, and everyone that made this program a success. Thank you so much. Until we come your way again, do have a beautiful day ahead.